I'm Chad.Taylor, psychotherapist, author of It's You, Oh Fuck, It's Me. No tips, no fixing, just real conversations. So today, here I am on my own again. And last week I had Toni Will. Toni was the woman's coach and author, a very amazing woman. She was also in recovery for addiction, like myself. We had so much in common. It was such a fun conversation. And last week she left the next guest, which turned out to be me, a question that was, what have you changed your mind about lately? And I usually spring that on the guests without them knowing, but I've been able to cheat a bit here. I guess it's made me link into the first chapter of my book, or the author's note, which is where one thing I've definitely changed my mind about, that I was the problem in the relationships I was in. For a long time, I thought the other person was the problem. I thought they were always the problem, whether it was the boss, the partner. Yeah, it didn't really matter who it was. Different partner, same story, right? Same ending. But it got to a point where I think I eventually ran out of people to blame. And that's where the uncomfortability came in. And it was very hard. I obviously didn't come to that conclusion on my own. Like I write about in the book, I met a man who really opened my eyes up to the world and really got me to show, hang on, you can be a victim to your story for the rest of your life, or you can actually dissect it and go into it and see what the fuck is actually happening, and why do you keep really changing out the leading actress or changing out the boss or changing out the co-workers, but the same problem keeps coming and keeps happening. So I suppose in the author's note, I talk about exactly this, that how do these same dynamics keep coming along and we keep either calling it bad luck or blaming the other person. You know, I was almost walking around wearing being a victim as a badge of honor. Like, the worse my story is about either my previous partner or my childhood or this happened to me, I thought it was intimacy, but I really see now it was just that egocentric part of me was just so stuck. And I see it everywhere. I talk about this a lot, and this probably will be a repetitive conversation because everywhere we look, somebody's telling the same story, really. That when I start to realize the common denominator is me, then I start to get some insight. But the shadow or the egocentricity in me that's been formed from childhood, it wants to protect. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday who means a lot to me, the man I was talking about just then. You know, in my book, I write that he'd gone out of my life and somehow magically this has brought us back together. And I'm open to what the universe brings. I had a lady reach out today and said, I've come across your ebook and I'd love it if you could send my father a copy. And for a split second, again, it was, who the fuck are you? I don't even know you. And I'd written in my book that if somebody really wants to study it, that I'll send them a copy. And I was really meaning a digital copy, but I thought, hang on a minute, maybe this is happening for a reason. So I reached out to her and got the address, and I've posted her father an author's copy. So if you get this, I don't even know his name, but her name's Jessica. Jessica's dad, if you get this and you ever listen to this, I hope you got what you needed out of the book. And if you didn't, just pass it on and leave it somewhere. Maybe write your name in there, and it can almost be like one of those little notes. But back to the topic, that the more I described how bad things were, the worse things got. And I went off on a bit of a tangent there myself. So Ted said to me yesterday, he said, a Japanese haiku, barn burns down, now I can see the moon. And I love these sort of little quizzes and little, I suppose what we'd call them, I don't know, to close my eyes as I'm doing now and feeling into what does that mean to me? And I think I've read enough and learned enough that in Japanese literature or Japanese storytelling, that the moon generally, or any Eastern philosophy, the moon generally is always God or consciousness, or that God sense in me, that God self, that higher self that's inside of me, that's generally clouded by the persona that's been created by myself and by others. And for anybody that doesn't know what a persona is, it's who we like to present ourselves to the world as. what makes us feel safe in the world. So the barn burns down, I can see the moon, for me, is really about, once that egocentricity burns down, I feel like the barn is protecting me, but it's really blocking me from the moon. And when that burns down, it seems like collapse. But also there's a freedom now that I actually have access to something deeper than me. It's amazing that two sentences can have such meaning if we just look at it. So I guess there was a big turning point for me when I started to realise, fuck, how could I be going through life so blind? How could I be going through life so blind here and not realising it? You know, it was pretty scary as well to think that here we all are running around on autopilot and everybody else is the problem. And I realised I would overshare with people. I was a plumber for a long time and I had a plumbing business, and I'd be almost using my clients as fucking therapists and having no idea I was doing it, thinking I was actually making a connection with this person. But really what I was doing was I was actually just bleeding to death in front of them, bleeding my emotions to death in front of them and having no idea what I was doing. When I look back on that now, I wish I could meet some of those people and make amends to them, because they probably just, when I left, was probably one of those people that was like, fuck, hope he sends the apprentice next time. I don't have to, I'm not paying him enough to be his fucking therapist. So yeah, I've come from a really unwell man throughout my whole life through drug addiction and alcoholism. And the crazy thing was that I thought when I put the drink down and I thought when I put the drug down, but that wasn't the case, right? It was running around what we'd call in AA as a dry drunk. I was running around thinking I was well, trying to save the world, but fucking more crazy than the majority of people that I was engaging with. You know, but it all wasn't bad. Through these experiences, I've got amazing daughters. I've got two daughters, and both of their mums are really good people, really good women. And obviously there was a reason, there was a lesson I had to learn there, and there was a reason why. And even on that topic, I was never one that wanted sons. I've never really been about, oh, I want my name to carry on and all this sort of fucking craziness, because I've seen relationships out there fail because they've found out they're having a daughter rather than a son, especially in old school ethnicity groups. It's really this sort of like the son has to come first. And who made that up and who said it? This is where I suppose we all don't do enough. We don't question things. Something that I'm seeing at the moment is really 2 or 3% of the population are narcissistic, but 97% of the population seem to think that they've fucking married one or dated one. And you'll probably hear that come up a lot for me in this podcast, because it really blows my mind that the simple mathematics is there, right? Like the maths is right there. Either our math skills are shit, or we're asleep, or we're projecting, right? So there can only be three things there. But I don't really believe in luck. I believe in synchronicity, and I believe in universal consciousness, and I believe everything happens for a reason. So I guess what I wanted to say here is, you know, that it really is about looking inwards. Please, fucking, for anybody out there, stop looking through the window and start looking in the mirror. What are you doing that keeps creating this? What are you doing in your life that keeps creating these things to happen? Is it so that you've got a story to keep going on with and you actually feel okay in that? What really is it? What does it look like for you to take responsibility in your life and not blame? But there's also a catch with this, what we've got to be careful, that really responsibility sounds mature and responsibility sounds enlightened and awake, but there's also a risk that if you're in a relationship or you're around people who will abuse that responsibility sometimes, will abuse you saying where you are wrong. Because if they're not going to do the same thing, it can be dangerous territory. So it makes it very hard. And like I write in the back of my book in the case studies, that if two people don't do any work on themselves, the relationship seems to stay together. It's not happy, it's crazy, but it stays together. If one person goes to therapy, generally the relationship fails because one person's waking up, one person's jumping in consciousness, and the other person's staying the same. And this, I think, can actually happen where it's like, oh, look, sorry, I realised that I just did X, Y, Z. And then rather than hit with, yeah, and I must have done X, Y, Z before that. It's more the fact of, yeah, and fucking you did this as well, and you did C, D, E, F, G. Oh, and let me fucking tell you about last week when you did H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. You know, we've got to make sure that we're in safe spaces if we want to do this work, because otherwise it doesn't work. It can damage us more. It can leave us open. It's a bit like, apparently I wasn't there, but there was a man 2,500 years ago around, or 2,000 years ago, that said, we need to learn to be as cunning as a serpent and as loving as a dove. So in other words, we can't leave ourselves fully open, because that's when we do get taken advantage of. And I think it's really making sure and being aware of the risk that it takes, that somebody can't use it as a weapon. So short and sweet podcast. The question I'm going to leave my next guest is, and I'm not sure who that is yet, have you ever admitted you were wrong or at fault in relationships, and had that been used as a weapon against you? Till next time.